Warning: I upload this video only for historic reasons. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this video do not necessarily reflect this YouTube channel view, thoughts, and opinions. The views expressed do not necessarily represent mine and may be considered offensive, inappropriate, or inaccurate.
This is an Action News 5 special report. Here is TV5's Dick Williams.
Action News 5 has learned that Vernon Presley is dead. Officials at the Memphis funeral home confirmed that Elvis's father died at 9:15 this morning. As you know, Vernon has been ill since last October when he suffered a severe heart attack. He's been in and out of the hospital since then. He had been making progress recently, but he took a turn for the worse. He was 63. Funeral arrangements are incomplete right now. Repeating, Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, is dead. We have Action News crews on duty right now at Baptist Hospital and at Graceland, and we hope to have further information later on in coverage. Stay tuned.
Vernon Presley has died. Elvis' father died this morning at Baptist Hospital. Myron Lowry is at the hospital now to give us a full report. Myron?
Thank you, Peg. Vernon Presley was admitted here at Baptist Hospital on May the 29th. 2 days later, he was taken to the sub-coronary unit. With me now is Steve Reynolds, a hospital spokesperson. What type of mood was Mr. Presley in during his stay here?
Mr. Presley was in good spirits throughout his stay here at the hospital. He was comfortable and without a great deal of pain.
No pain at all this morning?
I really couldn't say.
What is the official cause of death?
It was called a ventricular fibrillation, which is can be defined for you and me that it was a series of very serious irregular heartbeats.
Can we say this was a heart attack?
No, sir, I don't think that you could define it in that light.
All right, Mr. Reynolds, thank you very much. That's basically all the information that we have here from the hospital, Peg. He did die this morning at 9:20. There was a team of doctors that tried to revive him, but they were not successful. Back to you.
Thank you, Myron.
You know, after Elvis died, well, he still carried on the financial affairs of the estate, and he was named the sole executor of the will. Of course, the biggest chunk of Elvis's estate went to his daughter, Lisa Marie.
Yes. Well, you know, Vernon was the one who always was in charge of Graceland, although, as you said, taking care of the business, as Elvis wanted him to, holding down the fort. And after Elvis died, many people would come to Graceland hoping just to see Vernon. Roger Cooper is there now with our live action cam. He's been there since this morning before the word came about Vernon's death. Roger?
Peggy, it took about an hour for word of Mr. Presley's death to reach the gates here at the Graceland Mansion. The usual crowds of tourists, which are here every day, not for any special occasion, were waiting outside. They knew the gates had been locked and that the tours weren't being conducted because Mr. Presley's condition had worsened. What they did not know about, of course, was the death. Vester Presley, the longtime gatekeeper here, knew that his brother had passed away for some time, about an hour, but he just didn't want to make the announcement. Finally, he just had to let it come out, and he told the fans gathered around the gate. Here's what that scene looked like by videotape.
Hello? I was down in South America. Do you know where that is?
It happened today, so that's...
We're sorry, Mr. Presley.
Thank you. I know that very much. I just thought I'd like to cooperate with everybody.
Well, we know that too, but we also know your feeling.
Really do.
Yeah. We also know your feeling. You've been through a lot.
It's been very hard on me. We've been waiting for this, you know, thing that's going to happen every day, but he kept living on, you know.
Of course, that's been a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, it's been a
great pressure.
We've been going up to the hospital as much as we could and trying to run this thing too, and it's kind of bad. I'll try.
I still think we need to go sit down and close these gates.
Well, I will. Yeah. I don't know that, honey. Everything to me is all, you know, it's new. I don't know what's going to happen, when they're going to bury him. I know they're going to bury him here, and that's all I can tell you. So as far as the rest of it, I don't know.
You must go on and take care of everything.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry for all of you that we came to her. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I think I better do that. Sorry, I can't tell you more. I don't reckon.
You're jerking all over.
Yeah. Okay.
Vester Presley, the brother of the late Vernon Presley and the uncle to the late Elvis Presley, making his sad announcement to the fans here at Graceland this morning that Mr. Vernon Presley had passed away. about an hour after it took place. There was sobbing by a woman immediately who put her head against the stone wall here at the mansion and sobbed quietly. It's been dependent upon the people gathered around the gate to pass the word of mouth, as more and more people arrived, that of what had happened here and that another Presley had passed away. The souvenir hawkers continued to work the gates here, and at one point Mr. Presley came out, Vester Presley, and asked them to move on as a show of respect for the family, and the hawkers did go on at that point. As he said, burial will take place here at the mansion next to Mr. Presley's son Elvis and his late wife. As yet we don't know when that will take place. Already on a marquee across the street, the sign has gone up, "Rest in Peace, Vernon." That was a sign we saw before when Elvis passed away, almost 2 years now. From Graceland Mansion, Roger Cooper, Action News 5.
Thank you very much, Roger. And as Roger said, in just about 2 months shy of Elvis' second anniversary of Elvis' death. Nancy Hart has been going through some old photographs to give us a look at Vernon Presley's life.
What will people remember about Vernon Presley? His white hair, his poor background, but most of all his son, because Vernon Presley was the father of an American dream. On January 8, 1935, Vernon and Gladys Presley experienced the joy and tragedy of childbirth. Twin sons were born to the couple in Tupelo, Mississippi. One lived, one died. Jesse Garin Presley was buried. Elvis Aaron Presley became a legend. Vernon worked as a farmer, Gladys in a dress factory. In 1948, they brought their son to Memphis, seeking a better life. The rest is history. The story of Elvis paying $4 to Sun Records to make a recording for his mother's birthday is as well known as most Bible stories. So is the closeness of father and son. It even grew after the death of Gladys Presley in 1958. But for Vernon, the indescribable tragedy was his only son's death on August 16, 1977. The death that shocked the world destroyed Vernon. Vernon Presley had dedicated his life to his son, and when Elvis was gone, he dedicated himself to the fans. In spite of his failing health, he decided to allow fans inside the gates of Graceland. The strain of that decision took its toll.
Still hard for me to believe. I just can't grasp the fact that he's gone, you know.
Yes. Vernon had remarried Dee Stanley in 1960. That marriage ended in divorce. Last year, he appeared with a new fiancée, Sandra Miller. He sold his home, moved back to Graceland, but the heart condition worsened. One bout in the hospital in November, and this time, the heart could not be helped. And now the patriarch of the Presley family, the man who bought Elvis his first guitar for $12.95, has died, leaving his mother, 3 sisters, a brother, 1 grandchild, and a legend. Nancy Hart, Action News 5.
Good afternoon. There's sad news from Baptist Hospital today. Vernon Presley is dead. Father of the late superstar Elvis Presley died at 9:20 this morning. Baptist Hospital officials confirmed the death about 45 minutes later. Officials say the 63-year-old Presley was admitted to Baptist on May 29th, where he remained until his death this morning. Hospital Administrator Steve Reynolds says he died following a severe attack of irregular heartbeats. Good afternoon. There's sad news from Baptist Hospital today. Vernon Presley is dead. Father of the late superstar Elvis Presley died at 9:20 this morning. Baptist Hospital officials confirmed the death about 45 minutes later. Officials say the 63-year-old Presley was admitted to Baptist on May 29th, where he remained until his death this morning. Hospital Administrator Steve Reynolds says he died following a severe attack of irregular heartbeats. Vernon Presley started out in life on the bottom of the social scale. He has finished as the father of a man who made it to the top. Jim Jaggers has more on the life of Vernon Presley.
In 1916, Vernon Elvis Presley was born, the second son in a family of 5. In 1933, at age 17, he married 21-year-old Gladys Love Smith. Vernon and his brother Vester worked a farm together near Tupelo, Mississippi, raising cotton, corn, soybeans, and a few hogs. On January 8th, in 1935, his wife Gladys gave birth to twin boys. One died. The other was named Elvis Aaron. In 1948, Presley took his wife and 13-year-old boy Elvis to Memphis. Presley was looking, along with other Americans, for a better life. 7 years later, he found it when his son Elvis made the big time. On August 14th, in 1958, his wife Gladys Love died. In 1960, Presley remarried to Dee Stanley. Vernon started touring with his son, but the pace was too much for him. He had a history of heart trouble. He also suffered from diabetes. In February of '75, Presley was an outpatient at Baptist Hospital with chest pains. In the latter part of 1977, Vernon and Dee were divorced. Later, in 1978, with more chest pains, Presley returned to Baptist Hospital, this time via ambulance. On August 16th of 1977, Presley suffered yet another family death. His son Elvis died of a heart failure. Vernon opened his home to the millions of fans who came to pay their last respects to his son, the king of rock and roll.
Mr. Presley's body has now been moved from Baptist Hospital. It is at Memphis Funeral Home. Officials say the funeral arrangements are incomplete at this time. Eyewitness News will have more on the death of Vernon Presley this evening on our 6 o'clock.
Presley, father of the late Elvis Presley, died this morning at Baptist Hospital. Presley had been hospitalized for almost a month for treatment of a heart disorder, a health problem that had become more acute within the past year. We have reports on the death of Vernon Presley from Earl Farrell at Baptist Hospital and Cindy Whipple live from the Presley home at Graceland. First, Earl Farrell.
From Tupelo, Mississippi.
63-year-old Vernon Presley was readmitted to Baptist Hospital May 29th, complaining of an irregular heartbeat, a problem that brought the father of the late Elvis Presley to Baptist Hospital several times since the death of his famous son nearly 2 years ago. According to one of Presley's doctors, medical personnel used electric shocks and medication in an attempt to save his life, but the procedures failed. Doctors said prior to this morning, Presley was comfortable, alert, and in good spirits. They said it was simply the last stage of a very weak heart that finally gave out all at once. Presley died at 9:15 a.m. Cindy Whipple has more on the story in this live report from Graceland.
Members of the Presley family discussed funeral arrangements with Memphis Funeral Home Director Robert Kendall for about 2 hours late this afternoon. As he was leaving the grounds, Kendall told us that funeral services will be held at 11 o'clock Thursday morning in the mansion's music room. That's the same room where funeral services were held for Elvis. He'll then be buried in the meditation garden on the mansion grounds. He'll be buried on the left side of Elvis. His wife Gladys is buried on the right side. Kendall said the body will not be shown to the public and that the funeral will be attended only by family members and a few close friends. Elvis' former wife Priscilla and his daughter Lisa are due in tonight. The body of Vernon Presley is still at the Memphis Funeral Home. A family member just told us it'll be delivered to the mansion at about 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. For protection purposes, a number of city policemen and sheriff deputies have been stationed here at the mansion. Because of the burial, the meditation garden will not be open to the public indefinitely. A city official who was stationed here earlier told us, and these are his words, we have been given no official word as to when it will open again or if it will open again. At the Graceland Mansion, I'm Cindy Whipple, Newswatch 3.
During his lifetime, Vernon Presley knew what it meant to be very poor and very wealthy, completely obscure and highly prominent. Ray Pullman reviews that life of extremes that was Vernon Presley's.
Vernon Presley was a working man, elevated to obscurity by the fame and fortune of his son, Elvis. The elder Presley was born April 10, 1916, in Tupelo, Mississippi. He and his wife Gladys raised Elvis in a two-room shack that still stands there today. The family moved to Memphis in 1948, living in Lauderdale Courts. Presley continued to work as a laborer until Elvis launched his recording career in the early 50s and employed him full-time. Presley managed his son's affairs at Graceland and traveled with him on tours and personal appearances. In 1958, his wife Gladys died. 2 years later, he married Devada Mae Elliott Stanley, a divorcee he met while in Germany with Elvis. They had no children and were divorced after 17 years of marriage. At the time of his death, he was reportedly engaged to Sandra Miller, a nurse who cared for him during his illnesses. When Elvis died, Vernon was named the sole executor of his son's estate, the bulk of which went to Elvis' only daughter, Lisa Marie. Vernon Presley leaves behind his mother Minnie, his brother Vester, 3 sisters, 3 stepsons, and his granddaughter Lisa Marie, who lives with Elvis' former wife Priscilla in Los Angeles. Vernon Presley, who once admitted he would just be another name if it had not been for his son, is dead at the age of 63. Ray Pullman, Newswatch 3.
I'm Jim Jaggers. The fans and family of Vernon Presley are mourning his death. We'll talk to his family and examine his life coming up next on the 10 o'clock update of Eyewitness News. Good evening. I'm Jim Jaggers at Graceland Mansion. Fans here in Memphis and all over the world are mourning the death of Vernon Presley, the father of the late rock and roll star Elvis Presley. The 63-year-old Presley died this morning at Baptist Hospital at 9:20. This is the same hospital Elvis died in almost 2 years ago. A team of doctors worked over the elder Presley for more than an hour, but hospital officials say his heart simply failed. He has been in and out of the hospital several times because of his heart. The death is being mourned by fans and family alike. I spoke with a member of the Presley family tonight.
Presley was Vernon's second wife. They were divorced in 1977, but not before 13 years of what Mrs. Presley describes as a happy marriage.
And he was the strongest man I think I've ever known. I think that he just gave Elvis everything, his life, you know. He lived for Elvis. And of course that's the way that I would have had it. But he was the greatest and strongest man that I've ever met.
Mrs. Presley says it was Vernon's touring with his son that put a strain on their relationship, but she admits Elvis belonged to his fans. And in a way, so did Vernon after Elvis's death.
They loved Elvis, but they seemed to really love Vernon extremely well also. And the people have suffered along with Vernon after Elvis's death, and he's been very kind to the fans and very considerate in that he has had open Graceland for the fans to be able to come in and see. So I think that they are very saddened, and I think this is probably about the loneliest day of my life.
Jim Jaggers on the Night Beat for Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
Mr. Presley will be buried beside his son and his wife on the Graceland grounds. At last report, that private funeral is scheduled for 11 o'clock Thursday morning. Vernon Presley's death leaves only his mother, Minnie Mae Presley, and granddaughter, Lisa Marie, as heirs to the fortune accumulated by Elvis. Presley was administrator of Elvis' estate, last valued at $7,600,000. That task now falls to the Trust Department of the Memphis.
Father of the late Elvis Presley died this morning at Baptist Hospital. He was 63 years old. John Bennett has this report from the hospital.
Word traveled quickly this morning. Only about an hour after Vernon Presley had died, the small conference room outside the hospital's administrative office was filled with newsmen. At about 10:45, hospital spokesman Steve Reynolds came in to make this short announcement.
Mr. Vernon Presley was readmitted to Baptist Memorial Hospital, Memphis, Tennessee, on May the 29th, 1979, and he experienced increasing difficulty with an irregular heartbeat. He was comfortable and alert during this hospitalization and was in good spirits. Mr. Presley died at 9:20 a.m. on June the 26th, 1979, following a severe attack of irregular heartbeats.
The official cause of death was listed as ventricular fibrillation. In other words, heart failure. Presley had been in and out of hospitals with heart problems for years. But during his most recent hospital stay, officials say his condition worsened. This morning, though, he was reported to be resting comfortably and in good spirits. Then, at 9:20 a.m., Vernon Presley died. He was 63 years old. John Bennett, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
A few months back, Vernon Presley moved into his late son's house. This morning, news of Vernon's death spread quickly among the fans out at Graceland. It was obvious, even to those who had not heard, that something was different. The gates, normally open to visitors, were closed. And a normal day never saw that many cars winding up the road to the mansion.
It's sad. Very sad.
Are you here?
Yes, I have.
What do you think?
It's terrible.
How do you feel about it?
Well, it was a surprise. I didn't realize till I got here that it had happened.
Will he be buried alongside Elvis and his...
Be buried here in Graceland.
When will the funeral be?
I don't know that yet. Everything's a little too soon. We'll have to find out that more. I wish I could tell you now, but I can't. I don't know. So I've got to get away from the gate and go check out real quick so I get a man here to run it. So I'm very sorry. I wish I could help you more, but I don't know that much about it. Just know he's gone.
Very sad. I feel very sorry for the whole family. I think it's a very sad thing.
Don't give any more souvenir papers around here for a while. If you can't show us no respect, we'll have to have a law out here.
Vernon's brother Vester told those at the gates that Graceland would remain closed the rest of the day and possibly the rest of the week.
Vernon, like his son Elvis, was well known for helping people in need. Just this past month, Eyewitness News aired a story about a woman who came to visit Elvis's grave from Canada. Sheila Plant and a friend of hers were robbed at a motel near Graceland. Miss Plant is confined to a wheelchair and needs daily medication. The medicine was also stolen. Vernon Presley saw our story about Miss Plant and came to her aid. Afterwards, we talked to Mrs. Plant about her impressions of Vernon Presley.
We went into his room, and he's a very wonderful man as far as I can see, and he's happy, and we shook hands, and he gave us a check here for that amount. He just said that he was sorry that a thing like this had to happen, and with the money that he gave us, he said he hopes it will get us back to Canada, and that some of it will help us to get around Memphis and see some things.
There are a lot of people who are having fond memories of Vernon Presley today. George Klein was a longtime friend of the family's.
He certainly was that friend, and when John Bennett talked with Klein this afternoon, he told us about the effect Elvis's death had on Vernon.
I think that Elvis passing away had a tremendous blow on Mr. Presley. I think that his will was really dampened to go on. He loved Elvis more than anything in the world. And with Elvis leaving us, it really almost destroyed Mr. Presley. And quite a few of the close friends, guys in the group and all, we quite often mention the fact that we were extremely worried about Mr. Presley, because, as I repeat, his will was really cut down to go on. And a lot of times when I would talk to Mr. Presley over the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, quite often Elvis's name would come up, and we would reminisce about the good times and the fun times, and I could detect a sad note in his voice at that time, and the conversations a lot of time would trail off very sadly, and I would try to change the tone of the conversation to another subject.
Shelby County Mayor Bill Morris expressed his sadness at the death of Vernon Presley. Morris also talked about plans for an Elvis Presley museum and how he does not think the plans will be impeded.
Plans were not only in his hands, but in the hands of the staff and people who were working with him, and I presume that the Colonel Parker efforts, along with others connected with the estate, will pursue the museum or something to commemorate or to support the memory of Elvis Presley, and certainly will.
Morris says he hopes to be able to announce firm plans for the museum August 16th. That's the second anniversary of Elvis's death. The chairman of City Council, Pat Vanderscaff, told us Presley's death today is a tragedy which saddens all Presley fans. She, too, talked about plans for a museum, specifically the city's continuing effort to buy Graceland.
That
has been a priority item for the administration and council, and will continue to be, even probably more accelerated in view of Mr. Presley's death, to make sure that the heirs will work with us, because our hope from all of us is that there can be a living memorial, and a better fitting tribute would be to have Graceland. So we certainly will be pursuing it with the appropriate individuals.
We here at Eyewitness News have been unable to confirm the particulars of funeral plans for Vernon Presley. We are told that the funeral is to be small, simple service for family and close friends only. It's expected that Vernon will be buried at Graceland next to his wife and Elvis. In Elvis's will, Vernon had been named executor and trustee of the estate. That was nothing new for him. The elder Presley had been handling his son's financial holdings for years. The way Elvis's will was written, when Vernon Presley died, a new executor and trustee would be named in Vernon's will. Well, right now it appears that one of two people might be named: Elvis's ex-wife Priscilla, or the National Bank of Commerce here in Memphis. Vernon, as we said, had been living at Graceland along with his sister Delta, his brother Vester, and his mother Minnie Mae. They all still live there. And one final note, Elvis's will states that after Vernon's death, only Minnie Mae and Elvis's daughter Lisa Marie would continue to be taken care of by the estate.
Vernon Presley began life on the bottom, then watched and helped his son make it right to the top.
In 1916, Vernon Elvis Presley was born, the second son in a family of 5. In 1933, at age 17, he married 21-year-old Gladys Love Smith. Vernon and his brother Vester worked a farm together near Tupelo, Mississippi, raising cotton, corn, soybeans, and a few hogs. On January 8th, in 1935, his wife Gladys gave birth to twin boys. One died. The other was named Elvis Aaron. In 1948, Presley took his wife and 13-year-old boy Elvis to Memphis. Presley was looking, along with other Americans, for a better life. 7 years later, he found it when his son Elvis made the big time. On August 14th, in 1958, his wife Gladys Love died. In 1960, Presley remarried to D. Stanley. Vernon started touring with his son, but the pace was too much for him. He had a history of heart trouble. He also suffered from diabetes. In February of '75, Presley was an outpatient at Baptist Hospital with chest pains. In the latter part of 1977, Vernon and Dee were divorced. Later, in 1978, with more chest pains, Presley returned to Baptist Hospital, this time via ambulance. On August 16th of 1977, Presley suffered yet another family death. His son Elvis died of a heart failure. Vernon opened his home to the millions of fans who came to pay their last respects to his son, the king of rock and roll.
Brilliant part.
Folks from all over the Mid-South and the country are mourning the death of Vernon Presley. Tonight, Elvis' father was 63 years old. Mr. Presley had been admitted to Baptist Hospital many times in the past year or so. He suffered from irregular heartbeats, which required constant care. He last went into the hospital on May 25th, and this morning, in a room on the 12th floor, he died of that same heart ailment. Nurses said he was in good spirits and wasn't suffering any pain. Vernon Presley made few public appearances after Elvis died 2 years ago. People who knew him say he never really recovered from his son's death. They had a very close relationship. Today, as on that day in 1977, people gathered at the gates of Graceland when they heard of Presley had died. It took about an hour for the word to reach Graceland, and it wasn't easy for the fans to accept. As one told us, it's jarring just knowing that Elvis' father has passed away too. Across the street, a new message went up on a marquee at a souvenir shop. And back at the mansion, Vernon's brother Vester struggled to tell the fans what had happened.
I'm very sorry, folks, that we're not able to tour today. We will be open maybe Friday if everything works out all right. We just had bad luck this morning.
The gates were closed at Graceland today in memory of Mr. Presley. There'll be no more tours for a while. Vernon Presley will be buried on Thursday at Graceland next to his son. A private funeral will be held Thursday morning at 11. And we will have more about the life of Vernon Presley later in the broadcast. We'll be talking to some of his closest friends and associates, and we'll look at what progress has been made on something he hoped to see, a museum honoring Elvis. Today puts a special project in limbo once again. That project is a memorial to his son. There have been lots of proposals, everything from a museum for the singer to changing the city's name to Elvis Presley, Tennessee. The museum idea seems most accepted, but there is debate on whether to build a new building or move everything into Graceland. Chandler says he hopes negotiations can continue on a project he says will mean a lot to the family, Presley fans, and the city.
Of course, we have been in touch. As a matter of fact, we have an appointment now with Beecher Smith, who, of course, is the attorney for Elvis's estate. I don't know whether he'll be handling Vernon's estate, into which most of this memorabilia and estate will fall, except, of course, the home will still remain, and a lot of the memorabilia will go to the daughter. We'll continue to go as quietly and as quickly as we can to find out who will represent that aspect of the estate and to deal with them in hopes that we can make this a part of our city for the rest of time.
Chandler praised the late Vernon Presley as a great citizen of this community. Vernon Presley was a private man. He stayed out of the public eye, didn't have many close friends. Today, though, I did talk with a few people who knew him and Elvis pretty well. This photo of father and son was taken on June 26, 1977 in Indianapolis. It was Elvis' last concert before he died. 2 years later, to the day, Vernon Presley is dead. Dick Brogue was chief of security for the Presleys for 10 years. Today, he told me about Mr. Presley.
He, I think, deteriorated very rapidly since his son's death with all the pressures and the responsibilities that were heaped upon him. The people that necessarily filed suit and those that tried to gain things that weren't rightfully theirs. He took these all very personal, and I think that contributed greatly to his death today.
Grobe spent a good deal of time with Vernon Presley during the last year and a half of his life. So did Charlie Hodge, who began working with Elvis back in the late 50s.
From my earliest recollections, which is 1958, when I first met Vernon in Germany, he's always a very humorous man with a great sense of humor.
And Clarence Carter also met Vernon Presley in the 50s. Over the years, they saw a lot of each other, had dinner together frequently. Carter remembers one time when his nephew was there.
We'd had dinner and talked, and they had gone home, and the little nephew, some 10 or 12 years old, he came to me and he said, "Uncle Clarence, he's just people like us, isn't he?" I think that pretty well describes him. He was that type person. And he was that way to everyone that he met.
Of flower displays arrived at Graceland today, memorializing Vernon Presley at the flower shop across the street from the Presley mansion. Flowers arrived all morning long from florists across the city. And then they were delivered later to the mansion itself. Services for Vernon Presley, by the way, will be held at Graceland tomorrow morning. Today, the coffin is being kept open for friends and family to pay their last respects. The funeral will be closed to the public. Vernon will be buried at the Memorial Garden next to the mansion where Elvis and Gladys Presley are also buried.
We checked by Graceland tonight, and everything appears to be in order for tomorrow's funeral. Vernon Presley will be buried on the grounds at 11 in the morning. He will be placed beside his wife and son, Elvis Presley. The funeral is only for family and close friends. Vernon died yesterday from heart failure while hospitalized at Baptist Hospital. He was 63. Meanwhile, Mayor Wyatt Chandler said today the city is still interested in buying Graceland.
Mayor Wyeth Chandler today said the city is still interested in buying the Graceland mansion from the family of the late Elvis Presley in order to establish a permanent memorial to the famous singer. Chandler now says he'll negotiate with a Memphis bank, which is acting as executor of the Presley estate. Tomorrow, Elvis' father, Vernon Presley, will be buried beside his son on the mansion's ground.
Well, they laid Elvis's father to rest today. Funeral services for Vernon Presley were today at Graceland. It was a private funeral for the Presleys who are left and close friends.
Judge Evans. Judge Evans.
Good to see you, Judge. Good to see you. Good day, okay?
Uncle Vester was there. So were Colonel Parker, Lisa Marie, and Priscilla. The best the couple of hundred fans at the gate could do was watch for someone famous to arrive and strain for a glimpse of activity up at the mansion. Kathy Bai was there because Vernon used to wave to her.
I just wanted to do something for his family and show him that I appreciated him and, you know, glad that they had Elvis and glad he did what he did.
The service began at 11. We don't know much about what happened, but they played some of Elvis's religious recordings, including Peace in the Valley. Then they carried Vernon to the garden and buried him next to his wife Gladys and his son Elvis.
Oh, well, tired and so weary, but I must go along till the Lord comes and calls me away. Oh, yes, where the morning's so bright. There will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me. Oh Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness.
Laid to rest. Debbie Feasanton and photographer Bruce Brown were at Graceland this morning for the funeral.
The mood inside the gates of Graceland was somber as friends and family members gathered for the funeral. Vernon Presley died Tuesday morning of heart failure at the age of 63. Sheriff's deputies were patrolled around the mansion to make sure there would be no interruptions. The service was held inside Graceland about 11 a.m. The only music was recorded religious songs, sung by Vernon's son Elvis. An hour later, the casket was moved outside. City Mayor Wyeth Chandler, County Mayor Bill Morris, Sheriff Gene Barksdale, and County Clerk Dick Hackett were among the pallbearers. The casket was placed in a hearse and driven to the Memorial Gardens next to the house. The path was lined with funeral wreaths and flowers. Following were Vernon's second wife, Dee, Elvis's former wife, Priscilla, and Vernon's only grandchild, Lisa Marie. Vernon was buried next to Elvis and his first wife, Gladys Love. Officials say about 150 people attended. Outside, about as many fans were gathered. John Bennett was there.
Outside the big iron gates of Graceland, the scene was only vaguely reminiscent of the events of nearly 2 years ago, the day Elvis Presley was buried here. Fans had gathered throughout the day, but a smaller crowd, an orderly crowd, all straining to see what was going on inside.
I've been out here, I was here a couple of times Tuesday and about a couple of times yesterday, so I've been out here close to about 4 or 5 times since the death of Vernon Presley early Tuesday morning.
Some had come from other states, some from great distances. Many did not even know of Vernon Presley's death until they got here. They were disappointed the gates were closed.
We had planned on visiting the grave tomorrow, but as long as it's closed, we will have to go back home without seeing it. We're from Chicago, and we made the trip, our annual vacation.
Well, I've planned a trip to Graceland for the last year to put flowers on Elvis's grave. We arrived Monday night, and of course Vernon passed away on Tuesday.
So you weren't able to put those flowers in the grave?
No flowers on Elvis's grave. Now I don't know if I ever will be able to or not.
And according to Presley family members, the graveside area will be closed to all visitors for at least 2 or 3 weeks. Noticeably absent from the front of Graceland were the hucksters selling T-shirts, postcards, and jewelry. Today, only a paperboy selling copies of a newspaper with headlines of Vernon Presley's death. Today, all was quiet. John Bennett, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
The late Elvis Presley, Vernon Presley, has been laid to rest. He was buried today at Graceland.
The mood inside the gates of Graceland was somber as friends and family members gathered for the funeral. Vernon Presley died Tuesday morning of heart failure at the age of 63. Sheriff's deputies were patrolled around the mansion to make sure there would be no interruptions. The service was held inside Graceland about 11 a.m. The only music was recorded religious songs, sung by Vernon's son, Elvis. An hour later, the casket was moved outside. City Mayor Wyeth Chandler, County Mayor Bill Morris, Sheriff Gene Barksdale, and County Clerk Dick Hackett were among the pallbearers. The casket was placed in a hearse and driven to the Memorial Gardens next to the house. The path was lined with funeral wreaths and flowers. Following were Vernon's second wife, Dee, Elvis's former wife, Priscilla, and Vernon's only grandchild, Lisa Marie. Vernon was buried next to Elvis and his first wife, Gladys.
Well, Vernon Presley was probated in Memphis today. The bulk of his estate went to his fiancée. Control of his late son's large estate was transferred to Elvis's wife and an accountant and a local bank. Mike Lawhead has details.
All of the principals named as executors of the Presley estate were on hand to hear the probating of the will of Vernon Presley. The elder Presley named his fiancée, Mrs. Sandra Miller, as the executrix of his estate, while Elvis' former wife Priscilla was named co-executor and co-trustee of Elvis' $7.5 million estate, along with certified public accountant Joseph Hanks and the National Bank of Commerce. Vernon Presley made some changes in his will just this past Monday, the day before he died of heart failure at the age of 63. According to the will, Vernon's brother Vester and his sister Nash Pritchard will equally divide 1/5 of the estate, or $20,000, whichever is less, while the remainder of the estate will be divided equally among Elvis' daughter Lisa Marie, Vernon's mother Minnie Mae Presley, Vernon's sister Delta Mae Biggs, and Sandra Miller. Mrs. Miller will also receive all of Vernon Presley's personal effects, except for the furniture in his home. Vernon Presley's will places no restrictions on the possible future sale of the Graceland mansion, which the city has been negotiating to purchase for use as an Elvis Presley museum. The mansion's future now rests in the hands of Priscilla Presley, accountant Joseph Hanks, and the National Bank of Commerce, but Presley attorney Beecher Smith says there are no immediate plans for the sale of Graceland. Mike Lawhead, Newswatch 3.
The last will and testament of Vernon Presley has been revealed. Here are details from Joan Draghi.
Vernon Presley left most of his estate to Sandra Miller. In his will, he calls her his, quote, dear friend, beloved fiancée, and contemplated wife, end of quote. Miller, Elvis's former wife, Priscilla Presley, Vernon Presley's lawyer, and others representing Presley appeared in probate court today. Miller was named executor of Vernon Presley's will. At the time of his death, Vernon Presley was executor of Elvis's estate, and that responsibility was also taken care of in the will.
Mr. Presley exercised that provision in his will by appointing the National Bank of Commerce, Mr. Hanks, the accountant, and Priscilla Presley to be the substitute or successor trustees and executors.
The exact worth of Vernon Presley's estate won't be known for a couple of months. Presley died at Baptist Hospital this past Tuesday. Joan Draghi, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
The Graceland Mansion will remain closed to visitors for some time. The public will not be allowed to view the gravesite of Elvis Presley for 5 or 6 weeks. A bronze tablet is to be placed over the grave of Vernon Presley. Family members are composing an inscription for
the will of Vernon Presley was revealed in court today. He left the majority of his estate to fiancée Sandra Miller. Russell Ruffin reports.
Vernon Presley left most of his personal possessions, his cars, clothing, and jewelry, to Sandra Miller. Presley listed her as his beloved fiancée and contemplated wife. This will was prepared only one day before Vernon's death. His signature is very sketchy, which would indicate that Mr. Presley was very weak at the time. Vernon Presley left equal amounts of cash to his brother Vester and his sister, Nash Pritchard, in the amount of $20,000, or 1/5 of the balance of his cash estate, whichever is less. What's left after that goes in equal amounts to Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie, Mrs. Miller, Vernon Presley's fiancée, Minnie Mae Presley, Vernon's mother, and Delta Mae Biggs, Vernon's other sister.
Vester Presley had not heard anything about his brother's will until Action News supplied him with a certified copy this afternoon at Graceland.
He's listed you, giving you $20,000.
Oh, he did.
Or 1/5 of what is left.
Oh, I see.
So what becomes of the Graceland mansion that Vernon had managed? The city of Memphis would still like to buy it one day, but it is still in the hands of executors and trustees because it is still owned by Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie. But the will does give Elvis's ex-wife Priscilla a little more control over the mansion. She is one of 3 co-executors and co-trustees of this mansion, along with the local CPA and the National Bank of Commerce. In the next few months, Vernon's estate will be inventoried to determine its value and how it will be disposed of. At Graceland, Russell Ruffin, Action News 5.
Vernon Presley was laid to rest today in Meditation Garden at Graceland Mansion. The father of the late Elvis Presley was buried alongside the graves of his son and his first wife, Gladys. We have more on the funeral from Cindy Whipple.
It was shortly after 10 o'clock when cars began pulling up the long, winding driveway of the Graceland Mansion. Funeral wreaths decorated the front yard of the residence, and a hearse waited to carry the body of Vernon Presley to the estate's Meditation Garden. By 11, only security guards remained on the grounds. The family and friends of Mr. Presley had gathered in the mansion's music room where the services were held. Outside the 13-acre estate, several hundred mourners congregated. Some placed bouquets of flowers at the front gate. Following the services, Presley's body was placed in the hearse and driven slowly to the garden while members of the funeral party walked alongside it. Among the estimated 100 people in attendance was Elvis' 11-year-old daughter, Lisa Marie, her mother, Priscilla Presley, and Vester Presley, Vernon's brother. Others attending were Dee Presley, Vernon's second wife of 17 years, Elvis' former manager, Colonel Tom Parker, Memphis Mayor Wyeth Chandler, and Shelby County Mayor Bill Morris. It was the second time in nearly 2 years that death had entered the Graceland gates. In August 1977, Elvis died of heart failure at Baptist Hospital. The elder Presley died Tuesday at Baptist after a lengthy battle with heart problems. He was laid to rest shortly after noon in the estate's garden beside Elvis and his first wife, Gladys. Because of the funeral, Elvis souvenir shops across the street from Graceland were closed. Some shop owners had posted signs saying they'd reopen after the funeral. A large sign in front of the shopping center offered its sympathy to the Presley family, while fans standing at the gate peered anxiously into cars leaving Graceland after the burial. Some had come from as far away as West Germany, Norway, and Canada. Many came thinking they'd be able to tour the grounds. But because of Mr. Presley's death, the family has closed Graceland to the public for the next few weeks. Vester Presley reassured us they will reopen. The will of Vernon Presley, who after Elvis' death became the executor of the estate, will be probated Friday. National Bank of Commerce is expected to be appointed executor. Cindy Whipple, Newswatch 3.
Vernon Presley. Or 1/5 of what is left.
Oh, I see. I really didn't see all through it there, but according to it, they have left out one of my sisters, one of Gladys, Doherty, or something like that. She's been married to him a long time, but I never met him but once. So that's one thing. She should have been in there, I think, you know, and she's very tore up about it.
So what becomes of the Graceland Mansion that Vernon had managed? The city of Memphis would still like to buy it one day, but it is still in the hands of executors and trustees because it is still owned by Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie. But the will does give Elvis's ex-wife, Priscilla, a little more control over the mansion. She is one of 3 co-executors and co-trustees of this mansion, along with the local CPA and the National Bank of Commerce. In the next few months, Vernon's estate will be inventoried to determine its value and how it will be disposed of. At Graceland, Russell Ruffin, Action News 5.
So weary, but I must go along till the Lord comes and calls me away. Oh yes, where the morning's so bright and the lamb is light, and the night is as black as a sea.